In August 2017, the fourth largest city in America went underwater. Not for an hour, not for a day, for 5 straight days. Hurricane Harvey dumped more rain on Houston, Texas than had ever been recorded from a single tropical storm striking an American city. It destroyed over 300,000 homes. It caused $125 billion in damage. And when it was over, Houston faced a question that no amount of cleanup could answer on its own. Do you rebuild what was lost, or do you tear down the entire system that failed and start again? Houston was an energy capital, a medical powerhouse, a space city, and the most ethnically diverse major metro in America. More than 145 languages spoken across its neighborhoods. Over 5,000 energy companies, the largest medical complex on Earth, NASA's Johnson Space Center on its southeastern edge, crawfish boils in the spring, Friday night football in the fall, and 2.3 million people spread across 670 square miles of flat coastal prairie. It was massive, ambitious, and growing faster than almost any city in the country. Critics called it ugly, called it too hot, too humid, too sprawling. But the people who lived there didn't care what anyone else thought. Houston was theirs. And that sense of ownership, that stubborn pride, would matter more than anyone could have known. Beneath all of it ran a network of bayous, slow, winding channels that carried stormwater through the city and out to Galveston Bay. In ordinary weather, the bayous gave Houston character. In heavy rain, they became dangerous. And Houston flooded a lot. Tropical Storm Allison in 2001 dropped nearly 40 inches and caused $9 billion in damage. The Memorial Day flood of 2015 killed 8 people. The Tax Day flood hit the same neighborhoods again in 2016, barely a year apart. Houston had been warned, over and over, that its relationship with water was unsustainable. But what arrived on August 25, 2017 was something no warning could have prepared anyone for. Harvey formed in the Atlantic on August 13th as a weak tropical depression. For days, forecasters nearly wrote it off. Then it crossed into the Gulf of Mexico's warm water, and in 56 hours it exploded into a Category 4 hurricane. 130-mile-per-hour winds aimed directly at the Texas coast. It made landfall near Rockport at 10 p.m. on August 25th, the first major hurricane to hit Texas since 1961. Rockport was torn apart, but the wind wasn't the real threat. The real threat was what Harvey did after landfall. Most hurricanes push inland and die. Harvey didn't. The upper-level steering currents that normally move storms along collapsed completely. Harvey stalled over the Texas coast, drifted back toward the Gulf, reloaded on warm ocean moisture, and parked itself directly over the Houston metropolitan area. Imagine a fire hose locked in place, pointed at the same spot, running at full pressure. That's what Harvey did to a metro area of 6.5 million people. For 5 straight days, it did not move, and it did not stop raining. On day 1, 6 inches fell, manageable. Day 2 brought another 10, the bayous swelled to their edges. By day 3, rain was falling at 4 inches per hour, so far beyond normal that the National Weather Service reportedly added new colors to its radar maps because the existing scale couldn't represent what was happening. Nederland, Texas recorded 60.58 inches of rainfall over the course of the storm. That's more than 5 feet of water falling from the sky onto one town. Picture a person of average height standing in an open field. Harvey would have buried them to the shoulders. According to estimates from the National Weather Service, roughly 27 trillion gallons of rain fell across Texas and Louisiana in less than a week. Every major bayou in the city broke its banks at the same time. Buffalo Bayou, Brays Bayou, White Oak Bayou, Greens Bayou, all of them spilling over within hours of each other. Water backed up into streets, then yards, then living rooms. People woke in the middle of the night to cold water around their ankles. By the time they carried their kids upstairs, the first floor was gone. Entire subdivisions that hadn't seen a drop of flooding in 100 years were suddenly chest-deep. Streets turned into rivers. Highways became canals. Cars floated off driveways and drifted into intersections like boats cut loose from a dock. Flood maps became meaningless. Insurance zones meant nothing. The water didn't care about projections or planning or property values. It went where gravity sent it. But the rain wasn't the worst decision Houston would face that week. The Addicks and Barker reservoirs sit on the city's western edge. 2 massive earthen dams built by the Army Corps of Engineers in the 1940s to protect downtown from catastrophic flooding. Harvey was filling them at a rate engineers had never seen. Water levels were approaching thresholds that threatened the structural integrity of the dams themselves. The Corps faced 2 options: release water in a controlled flow and deliberately flood thousands of homes downstream, or hold the water, risk an uncontrolled breach, and potentially send a surge through the center of a city of 2.3 million people. They chose the controlled release. Water began flowing out of the dams and into neighborhoods that were already struggling to stay dry. Some families downstream had hours to evacuate, others had less. Some learned the water was coming from a neighbor's phone call. Others saw it arrive before anyone told them it was on the way. One of those families lived in Meyerland, a middle-class neighborhood in southwest Houston that had already flooded in 2015 and again in 2016. They'd gutted their house twice, rebuilt twice, replaced the drywall, the floors, the furniture, twice. When the water came for the third time during Harvey, it rose past the marks they'd penciled on their doorframe from the last two floods. This time, it kept going. Everything they'd rebuilt was destroyed again. That family story wasn't unusual. In Meyerland alone, hundreds of homeowners flooded for the second or third time in 3 years. While the city was drowning, Houston was already trying to save itself. The Cajun Navy arrived before FEMA's main ground teams did. Volunteer boat owners from Louisiana, many experienced from Katrina, hitched flat-bottom fishing boats to their trucks and drove into the storm. They launched into submerged neighborhoods, pulling people off rooftops and out of second-story windows. They coordinated through social media and walkie-talkie apps, dispatching boats to specific addresses where families were posting for help. Jim McIngvale, known locally as Mattress Mac, opened both of his gallery furniture stores as shelters. He sent his delivery trucks to rescue stranded families. His showroom floors became sleeping quarters for hundreds. He never sent anyone a bill. Strangers became rescuers across the city. Neighbors with base boats went door to door through their own flooded streets, checking every house. Construction workers used their heavy equipment to reach cut-off neighborhoods. A group of men carried a woman in her wheelchair above their heads through chest-deep water. A photograph of that moment became one of the defining images of the storm. First responders worked shifts so long that some collapsed from exhaustion, slept for a few hours, and went back out. The Coast Guard alone performed over 11,000 rescues in the Houston area. By most assessments, the combined civilian and professional effort became one of the largest urban search and rescue operations in American history. People who had lost their own homes were pulling strangers out of theirs. That was Houston during Harvey. The rescue effort was extraordinary. What came next would be far harder. Harvey killed 68 people directly in Texas. More than 100 deaths were eventually attributed to the storm. And when the water finally receded, slowly, over days, what it revealed was worse than what most people had imagined while it was still submerged. Entire streets coated in gray-brown sludge. Mountains of destroyed belongings lining both sides of every curb. Sofas, mattresses, drywall, clothing, family photographs, children's drawings, piled in rows that stretched for blocks in every direction. The smell hit you before you even turned onto your street. Mold, sewage, decay. A thick, wet stench that sat over whole neighborhoods and didn't lift for weeks. More than 1 million people filed for federal disaster assistance. Many had no flood insurance at all. In Meyerland, the family that had already rebuilt twice came back to stand in front of their house for the third time. The yard was a field of mud. Black mold was already climbing the walls inside. The water line this time sat above the windows, higher than either of the two marks penciled on the doorframe from 2015 and 2016. 3 floods in 3 years. 3 times gutting the same house, 3 times replacing the same floors, the same walls, the same kitchen their kids had eaten breakfast in every morning. This time, the question wasn't how to rebuild. It was whether rebuilding here made any sense at all. That question hung over the entire city, not just Meyerland. Every flooded neighborhood in Houston was asking some version of the same thing: stay or go, rebuild or relocate. Trust the same ground that had just betrayed you, or walk away from the only home you'd ever known. Answering it would take years. Volunteers arrived from across the country by the tens of thousands. Church groups, college students, retirees, disaster crews. They gutted flooded homes down to bare studs, ripping out every surface the toxic water had touched. Drywall, insulation, flooring, cabinets, all torn out and piled on the curb. You had to destroy the inside of a house before you could save the house itself. In the August Texas heat, tens of thousands of people did that work for free. But gutting houses was the easy part. The real fight was over what came after. In August 2018, Harris County voters approved a $2.5 billion flood infrastructure bond, one of the largest flood control investments in American history. The money funded bayou widening, new detention basins designed to hold stormwater during extreme rain, and upgrades to the Addicks and Barker dams that had been debated for decades but never funded. Engineers widened channels and carved out massive low-lying areas to absorb future runoff. To a family that had flooded 3 times in 5 years, these projects meant something simple: a chance to sleep through the next storm without packing the car first. But rebuilding wasn't smooth, it wasn't equal, and it wasn't fast. Wealthier neighborhoods recovered within months. Homeowners with good insurance, savings, and contractors on speed dial had their houses gutted, rebuilt, and elevated before some lower-income families had even received their first FEMA check. In neighborhoods like Kashmir Gardens and Trinity Houston Gardens, predominantly Black and Latino communities on Houston's northeast side, recovery was painfully slow. Federal assistance was tangled in paperwork and often insufficient. Some families waited 2 and 3 years for recovery funds that still didn't cover the full cost of repairs. Others were trapped in damaged homes they couldn't afford to fix and couldn't afford to leave. The disaster hit everyone, the recovery didn't. Then came the buyouts. Hundreds of repeatedly flooded properties were purchased with federal funds and converted to permanent green space. For the city, it was smart planning, removing homes from land that would keep flooding no matter how many bayous you widened. For the families being bought out, it was more complicated. Some felt relieved, others felt erased, told that the neighborhood they'd lived in for decades wasn't worth protecting. In Meyerland, the divide played out on a single block. Some homeowners took the buyout and left. Others refused and rebuilt a third time. Elevated now, raised 3 feet on new foundations, determined to keep living on the street where they'd raised their kids. You could stand on that block and see it all at once. A brand new house next to an empty lot, next to a condemned structure, next to a family grilling in their driveway. That's what recovery actually looked like. Not a clean sweep, not a feel-good montage. A patchwork of decisions, each one as personal as the family who made it. By 2022, more than 230 flood mitigation projects were completed or underway across Harris County. Brays Bayou, one of the channels that had caused the worst damage, was widened and deepened through a multi-year engineering effort. New building codes required developers to manage stormwater on their own land. Early warning systems gave residents more time. The infrastructure between the water and the people was stronger than it had ever been. Schools that had been gutted reopened with new classrooms. Churches that had stood in 3 feet of water held services again, sometimes in parking lots first, then inside once repairs were done. Small businesses that lost everything rebuilt from scratch, often with help from customers who refused to let them close for good. The city wasn't just fixing pipes and widening channels. It was stitching a community back together, block by block. But stronger isn't the same as safe. Houston is still built on a floodplain. The bayous still run through the city. The Gulf still feeds tropical systems that could park themselves over the metro area the way Harvey did. Engineers designed the new defenses to handle a major flood event. Whether they can handle the next record breaker, a storm worse than Harvey, in a climate producing more extreme rainfall, is a question no one can answer yet. Today, Houston's population is larger than it was before the storm. The skyline is taller, the economy recovered. Drive through Meyerland, and you'll see houses raised on new foundations next to empty lots where homes used to stand. Drive along Brays Bayou, and you'll see detention capacity that didn't exist before 2017. The scars are there, if you know where to look. So is the proof that this city refused to be defined by its worst week. Harvey proved something about Houston that the people who live there already knew. You can drown this city. You can ruin every room in every house on every block. You can force families to choose between the home they love and the safety they deserve. And they'll still come back. They'll rip out the mold, gut the walls, raise the foundation, and start over. Not because it's rational, not because anyone promised them it wouldn't happen again, because this is their city. And no storm, no matter how historic, gets to be the thing that takes it from them, whether everything Houston built afterward will be enough for the next one. That's a story that hasn't been written yet. But if you want more stories like this, the disasters, the destruction, and the places that refuse to disappear, subscribe, because there are more of them, and we're just getting started.